All right, we're here ready to pair on the back end.
I'm hoping this works okay, but so I have this dream to move all of the specs that deal with Elasticsearch to move away from creating the Elasticsearch indexes and deleting them like every single time it runs. I think it's around the context. And so anytime you have things at like lower levels, it gets really expensive, like deleting the indexes and recreating them. The search team tests used to be like the top 3 longest running spec files. It used to be ours. I don't think it's ours anymore, but about, I don't know how long ago this MR was, about a year ago. This is just to show the before and after of these 4 specs where this was originally introduced, and it made a really significant impact on the times. So I thought maybe it would be fun to
that sounds awesome.
try to see if they will all work.
I love fast specs, and I cannot lie.
Yeah, ours are bad, and these in particular, the ones that were changed over, they were testing permissions, like these permission, like almost like tables.
Yeah.
And so it was just like constantly deleting the indexes and recreating them over and over and over again. But I don't see any reason why we have to do that.
I've noticed that too. I think, like, I was just looking at one yesterday. It's like, you don't have to test every combination of permissions for every single thing. You can have a block of permission checks for the happy path.
Oh yeah, ours, I didn't change what was being tested. What I changed was whether the indexes were being created or not. So I can show, let me show the state of the code right now.
Yeah.
That might be.
I kind of think shared examples are an anti-pattern. I don't like them. It's so hard to debug. You can't focus them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it gets confusing. All right.
And they're easy to multiplicatively explode like that without knowing it.
Be like the parameterized test, Chad?
Or just write methods. Extract the behavior out to methods and call them. Anyway, so
my computer's freezing. Hold on, let me let it try to catch up. Okay. So we have this config that's set up for.
Is it possible you're not sharing the right screen?
I don't know. It says I'm sharing the right screen.
I just see Obster.
Oh no, that's not the one it says it's sharing. Hold on, let me see. Maybe I picked the wrong one. It's very possible. I could look at Obster, but I don't want to.
I'm just looking at bank account.
Oh, that one. It's very possible. That's really weird. It looked like it was sharing the right screen, but that looks right. There's code.
Yeah.
And hopefully now RubyMine.
Oh yeah.
RubyMine. Okay.
We write code. Okay.
So we have this config set up where it's called :elastic. That's the old one. And around every example, it does a setup and a teardown. The setup kind of clears some tracking, deletes all the indexes, creates an empty index for a few things. We have migrations. It marks all of those as completed, and then it kind of refreshes Elasticsearch, and then the teardown deletes the indexes and clears the tracking. And this is cool. But I think it's adding a lot of time. So we have a second one that was created, which is just deletes all of the data in the index instead of creating and deleting all the, we have like, I think 5 or 6 indexes right now, and it's going to get possibly more as we add more data to Elasticsearch. Or continue, we used to have one, we've been working on splitting it up into separate, like that work will eventually be done. So we should have somewhere around like 7 But if we decide to add projects or groups or users to the index, those will now be separate indexes. I don't know. I thought it was nice.
Elasticsearch has no concept of transactions, right?
Not that I'm aware of, not the way that I think databases have.
Yeah, because that's how you get around this problem with the transactional fixtures in Rails. Like it starts a transaction, then it runs your example, and then it rolls it back. So it's all just in the
Oh,
memory of. So
yeah,
things
I
like
don't.
this that are external and non-transactional, you have to do other things.
Yeah, I don't think it has the concept like that, but it is a good idea to maybe look into that. I feel like most of the places I worked at don't have a test suite as comprehensive as GitLab, which is nice and what I prefer. I like tests because then I don't have to worry that my stuff's gonna break.
Can I throw some really naive questions your way?
Yeah.
Do you know if the end-to-end QA specs run into time issues because of Elasticsearch at all?
I know the ones that deal with ours, yes, they are. Yeah.
It's a similar problem. And we may not necessarily want to fix that one because that one is more about not messing with the test setup and working on as real of an environment as possible. But this is just also for our feature specs. We're running into these.
Yeah, this is like for the integration tests and the unit tests and probably feature tests.
So my other question was to confirm that this indexing and re-indexing is causing slowness. My question is really like, so what have we done to confirm that that is a problem and that like maybe removing delete index actually makes things slower, makes things faster, or like?
So I don't remember how I timed this. I think I just timed it locally. But about a year ago, the times for these specs, like this is the before running the entire file, and this is the after. I mean, I think this was on my computer. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. I have one of the 2019s, but I think the numbers were different enough that I felt like it was going to improve in the pipelines.
Yeah, it's a half. That last one is a quarter of the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, your question makes me think there are still probably cases where we may want to clear the indexes. Like we have some tests around like creating the indexes. And so having them not be deleted and not have like a fresh Elasticsearch instance like might cause some problems. But when it's around just kind of mashing data in there and making sure that the search is working the way it's supposed to work, like it doesn't matter if the indexes are already there or not.
Yeah. So my really naive thinking was like, my understanding of Elasticsearch is it supports very unstructured data.
Yes.
It's not like a, what do they call it? A relational database scheme.
No. Well, we have like some of our data has parent joins set up, but we are moving away from that, and we're trying to denormalize the data so that anything that has like a joined record, which should also be stored in Elasticsearch, is gonna be kind of have that data copied. That's part of the work that we're doing to like split all the data off of one index into multiple.
So my thought was so like coming from like working a little bit with like MongoDB, inserting data, the database does some sort of indexing every time you just put data in there. Like, and my thoughts was, okay, we clear out the indexes, but we just insert all brand new data every time. Like, are we really clearing, are we even able to really clear things out just the way Elasticsearch works? And like, I don't know. So I'm just surprised that this would work.
I think
But
so.
I also just don't know Elasticsearch a lot at all. So I'm learning about
Yeah.
Elasticsearch right now. So
Well, that's why I thought it would be fun to do this, because I really wish that we could get like more devs at least more comfortable with like testing our MRs, because it requires like you have to have it set up in GDK, and then it has a whole nother piece of Elasticsearch that a lot of people don't know. But the delete, this is the MR that was originally introduced. Like you can just tell it to delete everything.
so is index, does
I
index mean something different in Elasticsearch land than like it would in like the Postgres land?
think so, yeah.
Okay.
Index is like a collection of documents and mappings, and
see.
documents are like almost like data rows. And
Okay.
yes, and I
So it is
apologize for
kind of
not
like,
being clear about
it is
that.
kind of like its schema then, I guess, or
Yeah, like it's where it's almost like the index is like the table and not the speeder upper
got
thing
it.
for queries.
Got it. No, that's super
That
helpful.
makes sense.
No, I think
And you
that-
are right about the data being unstructured, but you can tell Elasticsearch to have like a strict, and mappings are the way that mappings is like the way that you have your schema defined. That's closer to like a schema. Our mappings are locked down. You can't just add new data to an index that's not already defined in like the mapping or the schema.
got it.
It will throw an error. We have it set to like oh, I forget what the term is, but it's like it's locked down. You can't just say, oh, I have this JSON document, I'm going to add this new field. Like it doesn't work like that. You would have to recreate the whole index from scratch with a new mapping that has that field defined.
Got it. I've got one more question for you then.
Yeah, you can ask as many questions.
Oh, okay. What is so that's really, really interesting. So just correct me if I'm wrong, but this change is about, we're just going to clear out the data.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to remove these indexes.
Right. It's like, yeah. So in the same thing with I don't know how the database works in the tests, but the way that Elasticsearch is set up right now, it would be like if you completely deleted all the tables and recreated all every time you ran a test.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And I think that for not all of them, maybe I feel like it has the potential to speed up any of the tests that have the colon elastic associated with them.
My thought though is with, since these are since these indexes are like just an Elasticsearch land, different buckets that contain somewhat unstructured data, I'm kind of like setting up indices for a relational database would be more costly. This is just, I would assume, than just setting up unstructured data bucket. And what do you think is causing, what do you think is the slowest operation that Elasticsearch is doing when it's creating all those indices so many times? Like why is this so significant of a,
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, I wonder.
I think it's the fact that they get deleted. This change is not deleting the indexes. So it is probably the creation of the indexes that is that slows it down. Whereas this, because if you look at the two approaches, there's like clear tracking, delete indexes, create empty indexes, create migrations index, and all of that stuff is not happening. So to me, this sounds like a great idea and a perfectly reasonable approach. Because only if there's a test that actually cares about is affected by the previous state of the index is not being cleared. And if that is the case, you can still flag those as elastic.
I think
the ones you did flag as elastic, why did those need it? Well, like, what are they doing different than the ones that use the delete by query?
Oh, the delete by query, we only created and applied to these 4 because we got pinged by the engineering productivity team or the quality team or some team and was like, you need to fix these. They are the top slowest. I'll see if I can find the issue.
I see.
Okay, so like theoretically, the elastic ones can all be changed also.
Theoretically,
query.
but
Okay,
my thing was, well, let me just change it and see what breaks, and a bunch of stuff broke. And so I'm like, maybe that's not the case.
Hence, we're all here right now talking about it.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, maybe, yeah, I didn't expect this to happen. I mean, it's not that many tests, but quite a few broke.
These are unit tests. So does this even affect unit tests?
Mhm.
Am I missing?
Yeah, there are all the unit tests broke. I also didn't see, I guess, what I don't understand is like, is there an easy way to compare the runtime of specs? I don't know.
I mean, you can look at pipeline times, but there's so much
Yeah.
variation there too.
I
Yeah.
think running them locally is fine.
Yeah.
Do like 2 in a row of each one to make sure your caches are warm and whatever is running locally with your
Yeah.
GDK running.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, without GDK running?
Well, no, like don't stop your GDK in between.
Oh, okay.
Scenario, do like
Okay.
2 runs and take the second one so your caches
Okay.
are warm.
I wanted to see what all these failed because I think it's all the same things, and I'm wondering if that's. Oh no, this is different.
So we actually have a I've seen this so long ago. We actually have like some profiling thing built into.
What is ensure elasticsearch index? Like it's
Are you looking at one of
like one of the ones that had to have elastic in the MR.
Oh, okay, hold on.
I mean, I'm wondering if like the index isn't getting set up in the first place, but maybe you could just do only that in this case, but not all of the tearing down, and then it would still all work.
This one?
That, yeah.
I think this, so this is, let me look at this in the code, so I think it'll be easier to trace.
Refresh index.
Refresh index. Refresh index, I think it calls, this is like an Elasticsearch term where it runs, like when things get indexed to Elasticsearch, they're not immediately available for search, but it has this like refresh process that runs. I think it's like usually every 30 seconds that will like flush all of the changes and make them available for search. But in tests, we call it manually a lot of the time to make sure that any new documents like are visible in searches. Otherwise, the tests would like fail, and it's not really a failure. It's just like the way that Elasticsearch is working.
I see.
Yeah, there's a, oh yeah, see that it's called, there's 2 methods that we've used, refresh index and then the ensure Elasticsearch index. This one is to make sure that anything that gets queued up for indexing in Redis gets processed by the workers that are called by the 2 services, bookkeeping and initial bookkeeping service. And then it does the same refresh that says, okay, anything that was indexed then now needs to be available to search.
Can I ask a really crazy, can I throw a really crazy idea out there?
No, yeah, this is good. I like these crazy ideas because
Okay.
I'm going to take notes.
Okay, so it does, like Elasticsearch has a level of like non-determinism with it. And this is one, it sounds like one of the reasons why we manually call this method of saying like, you got to flush your stuff so our tests can actually work. Mm-hmm. Does Elasticsearch have any like testing oriented server, like a server that conforms to Elasticsearch API?
Yeah.
But it's optimized.
like a mode, like a test mode or something?
I guess so. Yeah, something like that. So it's like, hey, we can still interact it the same way in our tests, but it's not needing to meet the same requirements that it does at production time, because our
Yeah.
main goal is, did we get the interfaces right? Are we integrating with this correctly? And so this is
That's a
like
good
basically,
question.
could we replace this service with a test double? And
Yeah.
if Elasticsearch has something like that out of the box, would be really interesting.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. It'd probably be faster.
And I definitely wouldn't do that with like the end-to-end specs, but that's then like, hey, that full integration we get covered with the high level specs, but then now we have a lot more comfort writing fast unit tests. And that's easy.
I don't know.
It's
That's
just
a
an
good
idea.
question.
I don't know. I don't know what other people do. I
My previous jobs, like people just didn't write tests.
That's the fastest test, you know?
That is awful. I once had somebody tell me that they
Fast development, fast pipelines.
after I left the job, they were like, "Oh, these tests keep failing that you wrote, so we just keep deleting them." And I was just like,
Ah! Oh my gosh.
I was very nice. I did not say anything,
Oh man.
but it made me very sad.
That is sad.
Oh yeah, okay, the profile thing. That's good. I might do that. And then I think I could probably run it twice just to see where the slowness is and what the impact is.
Could
This
we?
question about Elasticsearch being almost either as a test double or maybe some sort of like mode where we wouldn't have to do this refresh all the time. I don't know.
Like an auto flush mode? Yeah.
Yeah.
I doubt that there's like a completely different test version, but there might be a auto flush mode. But that might make it slower actually
Yeah, I don't
than
know.
just doing it on demand.
Oh yeah.
The I'm curious to see some of these failures. Like, can you, one of the
We
ones
can look
that-
at some of them. I feel bad. I have to go in a few minutes, but I can try to stay. So I stay a little bit. I think what I was wondering and what you all are asking me questions about it is like, what should we do when we're testing things that should be creating indexes? A lot of these specs are written with the understanding that it's a new instance of Elasticsearch. And so I can open up this spec and just we can look at one of these really quick. The other one I know had failures was the rake task, which is used to create indexes. It's pretty much used to like create and manage the Elasticsearch indexes outside of things. So yeah, this is one of the failures, which is basically creates an index if it's not found. I'm wondering if stuff like this might need to have the old route, like the old way. I don't know.
Yeah, like anything that directly looks at the indexes probably
Yeah.
needs the old way, but everything else that is just caring
Yeah.
about, is this data found, can use the new way.
I think that's a good distinction. I really want to rename both of the helper or whatever these things are called.
Yeah, more specific. And also, like, it looks like it's not just deleting and recreating the indexes. The old one does a lot of other stuff. And it would be interesting is like, which of those things is like the one that's actually needed and which of them are the slowest.
Yeah.
Have you used a benchmark in Ruby?
Yes, but I always have to look up how to do it.
Right, so that's a good way to say see like which of those individual steps is taking the longest. Wrap it in a benchmark block.
So just for this setup, really, and see.
Yeah, like each of those things in the setup, like just wrap a benchmark around it and print it
Oh,
out
okay.
and see how long each one is taking. And you can even like have, you know, global, like $, like literal global variables that you collect them in. So then run the whole test suite and like, okay, aggregate, which of these steps is taking the most time? Like add the benchmark times to them.
Yeah, we would probably need it here. So almost like.
Yeah, like around each one of those lines, basically, and in the teardown too.
Mhm.
That's a good idea. And then maybe iteratively so that we're not making so large of a change, which is causing maybe unrelated errors to the actual
Yeah.
speed boost we're trying to get. That's interesting.
Yeah, so like the two lines individually in clear tracking too. And whatever
Oh,
you
yeah.
do, like and like the
I feel like I'm really not sure where the time is being spent. I just know that as soon as we don't do all these things around it, it's much faster.
yeah,
But I think it was a good idea to maybe look at renaming, if I'm gonna make this change, renaming Elastic to maybe
slow
like
elastic.
an empty Elastic instance, like almost like an empty Elasticsearch instance or empty cluster or something like that, and then like a preserved, or I hate naming things so much.
Like maybe with full elastic teardown, like
Oh yeah,
the
good.
the Rails module naming convention with whatever.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like
I
that.
love naming things. You can just talk
I
about it
don't
for
like naming
hours.
things. Naming my children, naming my code, been awful. um, this is cool. I unfortunately have to go because I'm in the working group meeting and I keep missing the Monday meetings because of the holidays we've had in the friends, family and friends day.
Yeah,
But I really appreciate y'all walking through this with me, even though we didn't do any coding, kind of talking through the benchmarking idea, I think is going to be super helpful. Because I feel like this is almost like a fun coding project for me. I mean, all coding is fun, but like this is like kind of
yeah,
not so much something that's prioritized for my team at the moment, but I don't know. I kind of appreciate watching you, Paul, like kind of just chunk away at things like, and eventually they get finished, but it's not always like, oh, I'm working 40 hours on this thing, but it's
yes.
something that you want to see like changed, right? So
Yes, yeah. Just I easily end up where I have like 10 MRs open at once and then forget about them for months. And then it's like a year later, it's like, oh yeah, let's do this and then push it forward and stuff.
but it gets done.
I hope this gets done. I hope this gets done sooner than any of the things I've started. Yes. So yeah, no, this is awesome. Thanks for bringing it up. I love. I mean, Elasticsearch. That's something I definitely don't know about, and I want to learn more about. And so seeing the code that runs some of this stuff, man, that's so helpful for me to get a more clearer understanding of what this must be doing. So cool. Thanks for sharing.
Sure, I really appreciate it. But if I think of anything fun on the MRs, I might tag both of you. But it's probably going to be a slow going march.
No, yeah, that's great because we just keep bringing it up here. That sounds good. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, and then I'll see you at the next pairing.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, hey, Chad. Do you wanna pair on something else?
Sure.
Okay.
I got something.
Cool. That's great. That's awesome.
I don't know if you have the answer to it though.
Okay, I might not. I have something too. But it's not urgent-ish, which is ironic actually, because it's about query urgency, which we talked about earlier.
What is yours about?
It's about the query urgency stuff. It's not bad. It's all right. Let's do yours thing. We already talked about query urgency before.
Are we still recording? We are, huh?
Oh, we are.
Let's share. There we go. It's for these GitLab flavored markdown snapshot examples. Like you want to have across every run, you want to have a stable like set of data to run them against, like the same group, the same project with the same name, the same URL. So when you snapshot them, people run them on a different environment in a different machine, they're always going to be identical. Like there's ways to ignore the changes, but ideally we like them to have like the same IDs and all of that.
100%.
So it's really just what is the right way to do that? Like I found it in, there's tons of places where we like make seed data. Like here's, I don't even know what these are. Fixtures, development. And these aren't even what is supposed to be under a standard Rails fixture directory. There's something completely random that is not what Rails fixtures are. But the problem is like it wants to create a repo, and these need to be run in dev mode. Like you just run it from the command line and it does its thing. I don't necessarily want it to have to use the test environment.
Yeah. Oh, so it runs on the developer database?
Yeah, you can just run it from the command line.
I see.
Yeah.
Do you
You
think
could run it in a test environment, but it doesn't matter.
Do you think it'd be helpful to not use models that are actually committed on the database and just create?
The problem is this is a command line script, and speaking of test speed, the reason it's I use to iterate fast from this, I use fast spec helper. So for example, if you look at like how fast this one, for example, runs. It ran in 22 seconds.
Yeah. I love fast
helper. There's one test at the end here, which is the only thing that actually does the shell out to the back end and shell out to the front end and have them generate all of their stuff, which is the slow one. Like it's not tons slow, but it takes, I don't know, 40 seconds or a minute. And so that's all like in a subshell, which is this, this render static is called from a subshell. And you can even, skip it if you want, but generate static. HTML, which just calls it in a subshell.
Can you share an example of one of the outputs that could vary across environments and runs and stuff?
Anything that like the class, let's see. There's not that many yet, but like here's sort of an example. Like on footnotes, I like hacked around this in a different way by like hard coding the ID to 42 with the hack. But like the text of it, the classes, the name of whatever it's referring to, anything that comes from the model and is included in the output HTML, which is lots of things for GitLab flavored Markdown.
Like, really? Like what?
Like for
like a ref, like a
footnotes. Like where's the example here? In this one, like a link to the wiki, which has the namespace, the sub namespace, the name of the file, the path of the file, the name of the file, all those sorts of things.
So this is my so sounds like you did something with the ID attribute already. And my thoughts was we could try tackling this of making all of the data consistent across runs, or we can sanitize our output.
I already have a way to do that, which
Yeah.
is like, there's this whole, for things that I can't do this for, there's like this whole approach where you have to define regexes that pull out parts of the HTML output and has a, you know, a numbered set of replacement regexes, but that's like,
Yeah.
it's a pain and you have to manually curate it.
Yeah.
So I want to do that for as few
So
things as possible. Ideally, I want
Right.
to have the data be consistent.
So my thought was like, what if line 58 inside of the href actually just said wiki file path? Like it wasn't actually like, is there a way for us to maybe just to stub out?
Yes,
some
that's
of
what I've even documented it. If you look in here and you look at normalization, like there's a whole approach that can, these are all the sorts of things that can vary.
Yeah.
And you can like define regexes and reuse regexes to do parts of them and replace refs. But these need to be like curated on a per example basis. And
Right. So I'm saying
carefully
maybe
set up.
if we could just do like a like allow method to receive this is that thing. So like doing this before we build it, we use these methods to build these paths.
This is in a Rails subshell. It's not a test environment. It's not a test.
Okay,
It's
okay,
literally
okay.
shelling out to Rails. There's no allow, there's no stubs, there's no mock framework. It's really running the app to really generate, really call the API
Got
on
it.
the front end and the back end. Which is the point of it. You know, it's a high level, you know, characterization type test, golden master type test.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want to mock anything out. It's the real behavior.
Yeah.
So I think this approach is fine. I know you like your crazy ideas, Paul, but
oh, I'm fine with getting crazy ideas shot down. But yeah, makes
my
sense.
real problem is like this will work, but there just seems to be so many ways to just like create a dummy group in a project, and there's so many dependencies a project has. Like it's got to have a repo and a path, and like here they're apparently like importing real ones, and you got to sidekick and stub out all of this stuff. So like my meta question is like, is there a standard way to, I just want to create a dummy group in a project? And where would I look to see an
And a
example?
database seed. So you want to seed a dummy group and project.
I mean, seed has a specific meaning in Rails, which is like, it's to seed the development database. But I'm saying, you know, in a more general sense, I just want to create a group in a project and create them with the same data every time. And if they already exist, don't create them.
Well, if it's has more to do like just at a runtime, I think it looks like there's this create service, right? That seems to be the
Yeah, which is the path I was going down to, like stealing this code,
Yeah.
and which I'll probably do, but it's like kind of unfortunate. It's so coupled. Like you can create a project in the UI, right, that doesn't have a repo, and as far as I know, these don't even need to have repos, right? You can create a project
yeah, it
without a
shouldn't need
repo,
one. Yeah.
but I'm like, there's
Do you
not a
think-
flag for that, and there used to be a this come on, this skip storage validation flag, which apparently skipped the repo, but I guess that like went away.
So wait, the create service is expecting there to be a repo? Really?
It wants to create, like that's where it blows up, like trying to validate that there's a repo, and I just try to direct use, you know, Rails active record create commands to create it.
At what line is it blowing up on? Create file.
If you run the whole test, you can see. Well,
So it will 100% blow up if we're giving it like a project to import, which that one file we were just looking at looked like.
Yeah. Let me stash this stuff. Is it clear? So if we run this whole spec, you can see, like, I was just trying to naively say, hey, find it by its name, and if it doesn't, create it and give it some stuff, and it blows up like repository cache something something. You'll see in a minute. You can see how slow the actual shelling
Oh,
out
but
is.
you're using just create. You may not necessarily be using the create service.
No, I'm not. Right. So
Right.
that's the path I was going down. All right, let's use the
That
create
makes sense.
service. And I'm like, is there like a standardized canonical way to do that if I just want a dummy one? And like those ones are what I found. But you can see here, it's like the Giddly client is trying to
Yeah.
do stuff.
And it's probably because there's a flag to opt out of a repository.
Exactly, and that's what I was looking for, and I couldn't find. If you help me find that one, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. I really don't know.
And like I said, there used to be this environment variable that looked like it did it, and it just doesn't exist anymore. And I tried to look into Git history to see when it was deleted and why, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find where it got deleted, which was weird.
Looking
Okay.
across the project for
enough.
just things called, we use this like create service thing all the time. So
Yeah, like we use the service pattern, like the controllers, and then there's a service layer which
yeah,
is responsible for creating it. But I was trying to avoid having to do all that if I didn't need to. But
it's possible. Yeah, it seems possible that there's a lot of baked in assumptions that you're going that route. You know.
Yep. Which, well, so we go back down that route. We could try it. So like, what does this do? How does this fail? So yeah, this is what I was going to work on today. It's like, well, all right, I have my group up here, but if we went back and looked at like what this was doing, this conditionally creates a group, and it's like, this kind of does exactly what I need. Why can't I just extract this out?
Yeah.
If I stole this whole thing, maybe it's what I need.
Hi. Have you tried to perhaps look into Project Factory? We also tend to create repositories in factories as well. So I think
this isn't the test environment. This is like the live dev environment shelling out to Rails runner. So you don't have a.
Yeah, sure. But as far as I understand, you were looking to create a repository, right? And you wanted to avoid the create service.
Yeah, you always forget you can use factory girls outside of the test environment.
Yeah, but I just wanted to point you at the possibility to look into a specific factory and look what they are doing. And I think they are calling project.create_repository. If it's just about creating a repository without using the service.
Where is that factory?
I think it's factories project.
I can send you the link to the. I just found it, but you may have already found it.
Yeah, if you search for custom_repo, custom repo. Yeah, you can see online 227, I think it is. It tries to look up the repository. If it's does not exist, it's just called create repository 227. Yeah, it's a little bit hidden in the supposed
But theoretically, if I like require factory bot, I should be able to just use this.
Yeah, you can totally load factory outside of tests. So
I always forget that.
Let's do
And
it.
I've done it before, and I was like, "You can't do that," and somebody told me, "Yeah, you can," and then I forgot it again.
Let's
I
do
I
it.
I tend to use factories a lot, like when testing on my race console. So it's already there. So
So
you can just use factory bot on that.
This also implies that you could even get the use the spying behavior outside the test environment. Like you can do that in JavaScript because the test libraries and spy libraries are somewhat decoupled. So if you want to mock one of those methods or whatever, that's
Yeah.
also, it is possible to use that outside the test environment.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
So for Aspect, I think like all the mocking functionality is a different repo from Aspect Core, and I think you can use it outside of Aspect itself. So you can just load the library, and it's very likely you need to include some magic module in order to have it like enabled globally. So you can do like stub or allow stuff too. So, but you can totally do it. I'm not sure if this answers your question.
No, those are good ideas. And what Paul and I were discussing before, honestly, it may be better to force this to happen in the Rails test environment, because then I can just blow away the database. And because the other thing, like in addition to like, these are all the things that could be random. And so I'm trying to avoid having to do the regex approach for all of these things. So I've got this list of things to do. The other one is like, how do you control the IDs, right? So you can like manually reset the auto increment ID to 1, in the database to ensure the IDs are consistent.
That is a good, I think, perspective, because you do have a non-determinism requirement and the test environment has a non-determinism requirement. So it does sound like there's some sort of potential for a healthy companionship.
Yeah, I guess the reason I was avoiding that is like so all of these dependencies, like the test database is going to be there, but like Sidekick in the test environment, elasticsearch, whatever else is needed during this, the course of these, set up an API call. I think those are all started probably in the tests, spec helper, and not necessarily, or they just guaranteed to be there by the GDK running. I honestly don't know. You know, Peter?
Yeah.
That's why I was avoiding the test environment. I was like, I don't know if all these dependencies are going to be there, but I know they're in dev, so I'm just going to try to.
Well, there is a difference between
recommend dev that I want.
Yeah, as you know, like there's a difference between spec helper and fast spec helper, and even in our normal spec environment, fast spec helper makes the specs run pretty fast. So I know that it skips some sort of like at least Giddily stuff and a whole bunch of backend stuff.
Well, what fast spec helper does is it doesn't load the Rails environment.
Right.
Which is like, it doesn't load millions of lines of Ruby code.
Right, exactly. But you can still use like factories and stuff in the fast spec helper, right?
Well, you can directly use factory bot, but you can't.
Okay.
It's a whole different environment with a whole different configuration. It's here.
So I think you cannot use it by default, but you can try to at least try some of them to use. So because we
Like
also have
versus
non-active record factories. So you could, in theory and in practice, you could use factories with a fast spec helper, but for that you need to load manually factory bot, but also the used models. which again should not use any kind of Rails code. So if it's just like some in-memory models, then you can use it.
That makes sense.
What do you mean models?
Wiki page, for example. I'm not sure a wiki page has any kind of
Yeah, like whenever you try to use anything from Rails, a controller, or a model in the fast helper, you end up just going down this path of madness trying to require the world.
yeah, right. But you can try actually to only require the pieces you really need, and it would be still faster than just requiring Rails and what all comes with Rails, like active support and all the stuff.
Yeah,
So
but that's not really the approach this takes. Like all of this is being run via Rails runner.
yeah.
This
But
is like
this-
literally invoking this script through Rails, and there's no test environment or anything involved. It's just, well, run this.
Sorry for being late. So what the task at hand was to, there's a script which kind of creates snapshots which we
what-
commit, right?
The big picture here is this is the GitLab flavor markdown specification, and this is sort of a it serves many purposes, but it's performance testing to say that our markdown is always rendered the way it's supposed to be on the right end and the back end, but also there's this characterization or golden master testing behavior to it. You may have seen some of these, but it's all of the like for every possible markdown example, and there's going to be like, you know, between 500 and 1,000, it renders the static or backend and front end HTML. But the problem is the API calls, and especially even for different contexts, like a single API call can be in a wiki context, it could be in a like I think it's on here. No. Yeah, here, for example, for a single API call, depending on the context you pass, it's rendered differently, maybe for wikis, snippets, groups, and projects. So that's why in this setup, I have to have, you know, at least one of each of those things for when the API calls, it'll do it. But ideally, it's got always exactly the same path, exactly the same name, so that the HTML it renders won't be variable, because there is a way here that I can deal with variability that's built in, which is this normalizations approach, which is like for everything, for every example that does that, you have to specify regex and what the replacement values are for that regex, which is a lot of duplication, and you can dry it up by using YAML anchors, but ideally this is all manually created and we don't want to do any of that. Ideally, it would just be exactly the same record with exactly the same data every time, and we don't have to do any of this. So that's the big picture.
Okay, so you want to kind of create
To
an
normalize all
environment,
of these things, yeah.
the same environment every time, right? Okay.
Well, no, just the same records, right? The
Yeah.
same records that I can refer to a given whatever in the whatever API call it is we care about, but that record it refers to needs to be identical every time.
And you want to do this in our spec suite or like manually, or
No,
provides?
it's the way it works is this. There's a command line script, this, which does it, and for the most part, it in order for it to run fast, all of the rendering is done by shelling out and calling for the back end this Rails runner, which says, hey, read a file that's got all the markdown I need to render and iterate over all of them, however many 700, 800 we end up with, render them out and dump that file and then the script picks it up. And it's the same approach for the front end too, except we shell out to call yarn jest for all the front end ones.
Okay.
So interestingly, front end, since jest is really good at completely setting up an environment just like Webpack would, this is a lot easier problem on the front end because it's jest does everything for you. But on the back end, it's like, well, there's so many service dependencies and state.
Okay, so basically you want to get rid of all the normalization by being able to
I want to minimize the need for normalization.
Okay, so
always having the same record.
Can you show the list again? Which one could we tackle immediately of the list? The list from the docs. Yeah, this one, right?
I mean,
you want to minimize this
ideally,
one, right?
It'll be most of these that we're getting rid of. This one, I think the only random value was the footnotes, and I fixed that with like an environment variable that I plug in to hardcode the value of the footnote. So it's really these, which come from, the group, the namespace, the file names, the wiki name, stuff like that, the attributes of the records themselves.
Okay, so yeah, I was wondering, like, I imagine you already explored this, like, what happens if you run the script twice? Should it like create the data twice or just rely on existing data? Meaning, like, if you create a project with a record identifier.
Yeah.
Okay, record identifier also means ID, so it would like potentially conflict with your existing local IDs, yeah, because like usually if you set up GTK, for example, you get like 20 project created, right? Unless you are doing like enable more project creation, it takes an hour to create or whatever. So,
yeah,
okay.
So to not recreate them, it's like a find or create. And as far as the IDs, I have a note about that here. What I was going to do is this. Hardcode the primary key to an arbitrarily high number, like just set it, the next primary key is 10,000. And like the previous project I worked on, we relied heavily on Rails fixtures. And instead of, like FactoryBot creating over and over all the time, we relied on Rails fixtures, which most people don't like to do because they have to curate the YAML files. But what we did is use object mothers to generate the YAML files. And it was a very similar problem in that you wanted them to always be consistent. So the way we did is like, it was MySQL, but you can basically hard code what you want the next auto increment for a primary key to be. So I'm assuming there's got to be a way to do that in Postgres. So that's what I was planning on doing, to force the ID to be whatever.
Okay.
For these various tables.
But if it's just like record IDs as the
Record
last,
IDs.
Yeah, but the other one, like pass name and so on, you could, in theory, or group name or whatever, you could just define, right? And
yeah, which is what I'm doing here. Like, got
hard-coded
names for the group, for the path. That's the plan. So I think that's a good idea. I think that what I came away with is like, I probably should use the test environment just to have a clean slate. Then maybe I don't have to worry about setting the IDs. And then I should definitely look at using the FactoryBot to try to do this. And maybe between those two things, that's all I need.
Yeah, I would probably also verify that you are really on a clean slate. So like the very first ID should be 1 and not or some other number you come up with, right? So just to make sure.
I'm gonna be very clear. All I got to do is run the script twice, and if it comes up with different numbers, then I didn't get it right.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Yeah, this is good.
Cool.
Those are good ideas.
Well, that's good. That's good conversation.
And
Uh,
we'll see if the test
Thanks for
environment.
hopping on. Thanks for hopping on, Peter.
Sure.
But man, better late than never. That's what they say, I guess.
I wanted to come earlier, but like sometimes life does not allow someone to join earlier.
Well, I totally understand. There are
Kids.
yes, there are there's many times when I'm on a meeting and it's like, oh, it's been 5 minutes, no one's showing up, so I close it out. Then someone shows up like at 20 minutes later and it's like, where is everybody? I don't know.
Was that the GraphQL one? Did you show up
Yeah.
for the GraphQL?
Yeah.
I did. I showed up at about 20 after that.
Did you really? Oh, that's
Out of
hilarious.
bed at 6:20 in the morning.
That
and
was
I
100% me. I waited for
Nobody
I
here.
actually waited there for like 10 to 15 minutes. That's really funny. I wasn't just
Sorry.
sitting there. I was being productive too. Don't tell my boss. I'm joking.
6:20 is early. It's hard to make it at 6 on the dot.
Those meetings have gotten really thin. I need to
Sleep,
I need to
prepare.
cancel them. I know we have other pairing meetings, so I need to just cancel those ones. Anyways, thanks everyone for hopping on. All right, see you around.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.